Hello, and welcome to Dig It. I'm Peter Brown, and hosting the show with me today is Chris Day. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Peter. February
in the garden. Well, we've had a nice few weeks of cold weather, haven't we, Chris?
Oh, we have indeed, Peter. It's been good, and since Christmas actually, we've had quite a bit of normal weather we you'd expect at this time of the year.
Yeah, proper winter at last, and
indeed.
It's been very dry, hasn't it?
It has, yeah. I think going back through January, if we look back at their figures, they're saying 50% drier than normal. So,
okay.
So that's probably good in one respect, because we have had some very wet winters over previous years, which have caused all sorts of problems for all of us, whether we're gardening or not.
Yeah, isn't it? I think that's always one of the joys of gardening in the winter, isn't it? You tramp across the vegetable patch and your boots are absolutely covered in mud by the end of it, but that's the joy of it, isn't it?
Yeah, but certainly that the frost is good for us gardeners. I mean, yes, it does help to break down, especially on clay soil. So often, gardeners are often encouraged to what they call rough dig, so you keep the soil nice and open, so the frost breaks down to create that wonderful word, is it tilth, which we really need to be improving, especially if we're going to be doing lots of sowings of veg seeds in the next few weeks. So, all round it's good. And of course, I suppose for the wildlife, it's sort of double-edged, really. I certainly have been topping up my bird feeders a lot at recent times, and they seem to have an insatiable appetite for food. So, I think it's good. It's feeling like quite a normal winter.
That's it. And snowdrops are just starting to poke their head through, aren't they?
They are indeed, yes. I did see a real nice patch on a walk the other day, which is encouraging. But certainly one plant on the garden centre here, which is smelling amazing, is the sweet box.
Okay.
So is
that Sarcococker?
That's it. Yes. It's it's all the sweet box, sometimes called Christmas box. I'm never quite sure why. I think perhaps one year it did flower in December, but normally it's well into late January, February when it's doing its thing, and it smells amazing. So it's certainly a little bit of a gem of a plant to have, either in a pot close to a door or as a hedge line, certainly.
Yeah, because there's not much flowering at the moment, is there? And certainly scent I think, is one of the best things about gardening, and nice idea. Put one by your front door, or a pair of them either side, and
ideal.
Walk out to a lovely smell every morning.
Indeed. I know we put a nice display together the other day with things which were just coming into flower. So you've got your things like your hamamelis, your witch hazels, which actually flowered quite a lot earlier. A lot of them at the garden centre here were in flower before Christmas. But we've got one or two little late lingerers which are looking really good at the moment. So I mean,
because they have really sort of, I won't say weird, but I think they're weird sort of flowers. Is it the stamen that you see sort of? It's almost like the inside of a crocus flower when you see the saffron growing. It almost reminds me of that, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they have almost like a sort of spidery appearance. They're all sort of all sort of zigzaggy and quite different from any other plant. Of course, they are slightly ericaceous, so you have to sort of treat them quite carefully. And I was always taught that they need to be planted in a little bit of shade, sort of woodland setting. So if you've got a nice area in the garden with a tree and your soil's okay, it does make a lovely plant. And it's slow growing, so it'll sit there and create a lovely, amazing bit of colour. And scent, of course, it has quite a nice bit of scent to it.
Okay, thanks for that then. So, what's been in the news this week then, Chris?
Yeah, there's lots going on, really. Obviously, we've got the National Garden Scheme. They've announced the amount of money they took over the last year, which is good. Of course, a lot of people will be aware of the NGS Yellow Book Scheme and will have visited gardens, albeit in perhaps a more reduced way because of the pandemic. But they've actually announced over £3 million are going to various nominated charities, which is incredible, really.
That's brilliant, isn't it? Yeah, it's so nice when you get to go and see around your sort of neighbourhood's open gardens. I love it, and it's always interesting to get some good ideas if you want to see sort of. It's amazing how diverse people's imagination can be when it comes to gardens, and I think it's a great opportunity to see gardens that are sort of similar to where yours is. So yeah, and £3 million is a big old figure, isn't it? That's good work.
It is indeed. And it's obviously the main charities there. But so really through the course of this year, obviously continue visiting, I think. And I think obviously as restrictions through the pandemic lift, we've probably got a bit more keen to get out there as well. But we've got a little bit of news as well from our Ripple Africa charity event, which we did through December, haven't we, Peter?
Yeah, because I don't know if you remembered, when you buy a Christmas tree from us, we donate 50 pence to Ripple Africa, and that means that they can go off and plant 2 trees. And we managed to get 668 trees planted. Or will be planted, I think. I don't think they've been planted just yet, have they? But overall, there was over 20,000 trees will be planted because of all of everyone's good donations to them.
It's been obviously a very good, successful campaign. So a big thank you for our customers to support our cut Christmas trees, and such an easy way of donating and making a difference.
That's it. And if you want to learn more about that, there was a podcast that we did a couple of podcasts ago, wasn't it? With
December, wasn't it? Yes, in December.
Yeah. So have a listen to the podcast we put out at the 1st of December, and you can learn a bit more about what they get up to.
Yes, and also we have some rather sad news to report this month, Peter, and that was the passing of Mr. Gardening, the legendary Peter Seabrook.
I did read that, very sad, so condolences to his family.
Most definitely, yes.
He was just such an amazing journalist, wasn't he? I mean, he's so dedicated towards gardening, it was lovely to sort of listen to and read his articles.
Yes, and I mean, he goes back, he's had a big connection with the gardening trade from a very early age. In fact, he saved money at school to get a visit over to Holland, and he actually sort of wagged school to get there. I was listening to one of his conversations a few months ago, and he really, gardening ran through his blood, definitely. He was the lifeblood of it, and it showed right through. He had a massive interest in sweet peas. He would enthuse about those. But of course, he was so well known to the sort of a generation in the 70s and 80s because he did a stint on Pebble Mill at 1, obviously the famous Birmingham lunchtime programme, which I was brought up with, and that was my first indication of growing vegetables, to be very honest with you.
Okay.
He had a small little veg plot there, which he tended each week, and that was very insightful. And then, of course, he did a small stint on Gardener's World where he replaced Percy Thrower when Percy Thrower was given the welly boot from ITV for advertising ICI chemicals, if I remember rightly. So he was co-presenting that. But he was also quite well known in America. For nearly 20 years he did an American gardening program, so he used to jet across over to Boston to do that. So as well as all the stuff he was doing obviously in the UK, and of course for us as podcasters, Peter, I think he was inspirational because his first podcast called This Week in the Garden was first broadcast in December 2016.
Wow, so, well ahead of us then.
Oh, just a bit. And he's racked up over 200 episodes in that time. So I think in that respect, he adapted to anything which he was thrown at. I think he had a go at doing, and he did it very, very well and with such prowess. And I think, the gardening trade's going to miss him. That's for sure.
Definitely, and equally, I think the general public will because he really was the sort of spokesperson for the people. His articles in the Sun, and they were just aimed at you and I. Everybody was inclusive. He was never exclusive of the way he spoke. And of course, he did lots of wonderful work for the schools as well. He was a mantra for that. And Chelsea Flower Show will be a different place because obviously he supported so many growers, and obviously Sunflower Street, which was quite innovative when it first came out, and again gave a light to showing that anybody can get into gardening and make a really good job of it. Without a doubt, and equally the GCA from a trade point of view. The GCA inspector a while back, and I think he was one of the sort of founding parts of the Garden Centre Association, which is and one interesting fact, Peter, I did hear, and it makes sense now. His first book, he has quite a few books published, was Shrubs in the Garden, and part of the book was put to music. Okay.
And the Sydney Opera House actually recorded it, as a special as a special occasion piece, and that's the piece of music. If you do listen back onto This Week in Your Garden, how that starts is that piece of music to his book, which I think is a wonderful, fitting tribute, to the airwaves, really.
It certainly is. And our favourite flower show has got a new sponsor, hasn't it, Chris?
It has, the RHS Flower Show is going to be sponsored this year and for the next 4 years by the Newt. That's the hotel and garden venture down in Somerset, which I visited about 2-3 years ago.
Okay, what's it like?
Very good. It is an amazing place. And it's well known for its wall garden, which has a really interesting maze of apple trees.
Oh, right.
A parabola. That's what they call it.
Okay.
That's the word of today. That's the new gardening word we've all learned. It's and it's an amazing place. They've obviously thrown an awful lot of money at it. I have to say, I think the hotel had a major refit, and I think with that they decided to spend quite a considerable amount of money on redeveloping the whole garden. So it's a set of garden rooms. It's got a wonderful vegetable garden, producing I think sort of 200 or 300 different types of herbs and veg. Incredible numbers, and it's got a traditional sort of herbaceous borders, very Gertrude Jekyll, very traditional. So it's a real mixture. I enjoyed it. I only visited it once, and it was on a hot summer's day, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a really good experience. Lots of water features as well. So if you like water features and like trickling water, lots of things for children to be involved in. Quite a lot of interactive displays too, and they also producing all those apples. They produce lots of cider, and they do cider production on site as well. So it's got a bit of everything there. Yeah, so it's very good. So it will be interesting to see how that benefits the Newt in future. I'm sure the coverage it'll get will certainly put it on the map for the next few years. And of course, the BBC are continuing as well to provide coverage for which is good news.
Yeah, because I hate to not be able to watch it on television, because obviously the tickets are just
a little bit expensive.
It's a bit of an expensive day out. I've never been, and I'd love to go, but I think not being able to see it on the telly would be a great shame.
Yeah, and I suppose it does beg the question, doesn't it, Peter? You know, the BBC at the moment are under a lot of there's lots of discussion on how it's going to be funded in the future, and I'd be very sad if we couldn't see things like the Chelsea Flower Show on our screens.
Well, maybe Netflix will pick it up for us.
Or Amazon Prime, but we better watch this space, perhaps. Okay. Yes, and another newsy story from Bristol University, and it's actually a new study suggesting, as if we didn't really already know this, that our small urban gardens are playing a very important part in helping our bees and our pollinators. Yep. And we seem to be doing the right things with planting. And I think, let's face it, as garden centres now, we're very, very active in promoting the right sort of plants, and our growers, our suppliers, are doing a wonderful job by labelling them in such a way that makes it easier to access that information. So I think it's good news, and hopefully this extra study is just enforcing the fact that gardeners are doing a grand job, and we need to maintain
keep
that.
it up. Yeah, definitely, because I totally agree. I mean, the seed suppliers, you just have to look at most of the packets these days, and they say sort of bee friendly, or that sort of little badge that you see, and it's a brilliant thing. And I recently, talking about nature a little bit more, I recently read an article that was suggesting that shrews will eat bees, and there's been cases of, it's not very common, but obviously shrews aren't that common either, but the little baby shrews are quite good at catching bees, and they behead them and eat their insides as a source of nutrients.
Oh, that's nice. Okay.
It's possibly not the most positive
no, but then I suppose
but that's nature, isn't it?
That's the circle of life, as they say, isn't it? Yeah.
Okay, and what we got going on this month then, Chris?
Yeah, there's a few things sort of slightly retrospectively. I thought I made mention because January has been quite big in the media for garden related antics, and of course we've had Sir David Attenborough's new series, The Green Planet, airing on BBC One and on the BBC iPlayer. So if you haven't caught up with that, I really strongly suggest you do. It's fantastic viewing.
It's a good one, is it?
It is. I mean, the photography and the clever photography to create to pick up these amazing things plants do. Yep. Whether it's movement, whether it's catching insects, whether it's growing, it really will give you a bit of a headache in fact that plants can do such amazing things.
No, I watched time-lapse photography of some brambles a few years ago, and I was just...
Yeah.
It is incredible. You think, well, it's a plant. How's it ever going to know? I mean, you can understand they grow towards the light, but they do so much more than that, don't they? They sort of decide which way they want to go. And
yes.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, so certainly the recent episode I watched, there's a plant called Dodder, well known for its antics, how it parasitizes and basically lives on other plants, including things like brambles and nettles.
Okay.
I didn't know it did what it did, and certainly it's a plant we all need to be very wary of, because it's got quite a ferocious appetite in what it wants to do. It wants to take food and goodness from all the plants around it and take world domination, basically.
Right,
So,
and it grows in the UK, does it?
Dodder is, mainly the photography they did, I think, was further afield, but I haven't seen Dodder in the UK personally, but it's more of a tropical plant.
Okay.
Per se. But my word, does it grow, and does it do some really nasty work to plants which are trying to grow? Because you're saying about time lapse. One of the episodes Sir David looks at is how over the course of the changing seasons after the winter, how the forest floor basically regenerates and which plants sort of appear first. Usually it's nettles, brambles, and then other things. Well, this dodder takes the opportunity of piggybacking all those sort of plants to maximise its own good. It's amazing. Such facts. I mean, the thing is with all those sort of programmes, you learn so much, from the natural planet.
Well, definitely. I know I haven't started watching it yet, but I do intend to. And looking forward to watching that.
Yeah, and on a totally different front, we've had Monty Don on his series called Adriatic Gardens, which is just finished on the TV, which obviously is on the iPlayer. Again, I'm not a massive Monty Don fan per se. However, when he presents these sort of travel log gardening programs, very, very good. Again, fantastic filming, really good narrative commentaries, and some amazing gardens as well. So that's one we're looking out for on the iPlayer. So it's Monty Don's Adriatic Gardens.
Okay. The Kew Gardens Orchid Festival is returning.
Yes, yeah.
Orchids I love. I think they're so... one of the best flowering plants I think you can grow. They're so easy. They're so. I think they're brilliant.
And that's why they're number one in the popular charts as flowering plants these days, isn't it? Because of they're so good and reliable. But the Kew Gardens Orchid Festival does return after obviously taking 2 years out, and it runs from the 5th of February through to the 6th of March, and. They usually use one or two of their conservatories there to create some amazing displays. They build these displays from scratch, bringing in plants from everywhere to create a display which is pretty spectacular.
Excellent. Okay, well maybe we can go and see that then.
Yeah, put it on the list, certainly.
We were talking earlier about Snowdrops, weren't we? And you found a wonderful website, haven't you, Chris?
Yes, indeed. Certainly in the UK, greatbritishgardens.co.uk have a particular section on their website which highlights all the fantastic gardens, large and small, which have sort of snowdrop collections. So click on there and you can obviously see what's available. It also gives you links to their websites for obviously admittance and entries and such like. But I think it's a really good way, especially if you want to find somewhere local which has a really nice snowdrop collection. And of course, the month of February into early March is the time to go and see them. I suspect with the weather being as chilly as it has been, things are holding back quite nicely. So hopefully we'll be able to enjoy them well into February. So check the website. We'll put a link on the show notes.
Brilliant. So I know it's February now, but obviously we've had the potatoes in for what's about last month now, isn't it? They generally come in. We got them out a little bit earlier, just before Christmas this year. Normally they come out in between Christmas and New Year. But lovely to see all the. What we got 45 different varieties of potatoes out for sale at the moment. Leads us on to Grafton Grow Day, doesn't it?
It does, Peter. Yes, we're excited. It's returning again. It's been obviously quashed because of COVID, but we're back on Saturday, the 5th of February, to talk. Basically, we're going to talk potatoes. There's going to be a potato representation, but mainly it's all about fruit tree grafting. We have invited the Midshires Orchard Group to come along, and there's two grafters, Andy and Steve. They'll be our grafters for the day, and they'll be sort of demonstrating and actually doing grafts of apples, pears, plums, for those people who want to see a graft done literally in front of them, or they've got some scion wood, some variety wood from a different variety they want to actually attach to a rootstock. So very educational. So if you fancy learning a whole new skill, there's an opportunity to exchange scion wood. So that's different varieties. A lot of them are heritage old varieties, which are brought over from all around the sort of three counties of Buckinghamshire, Oxfordshire, and into Northamptonshire, as well as Gloucestershire as well. So we get a whole sort of gene pool of these varieties which people bring along to be possibly exchanged for another variety, which people then might want to take home and graft and grow their new fruit tree with a lot of heritage attached to it. So, yeah, very, very exciting.
And just thinking about that, Chris, can customers bring sort of a section of wood from a fruit tree that they've got in their garden and have that grafted?
They can, yeah.
So if they've got something that's not doing maybe quite so well, pick a good bit off. And how much sort of wood do you need, and which bit of the tree do you need?
Generally, so you need sort of a pencil thickness stem, obviously of growth, which is probably 1 to 2 years old. So sort of pencil thickness. So bring 2 or 3 pieces in with you. Like anything, there is a small grafting charge for the service, but obviously we've got all the rootstocks, all the apple rootstocks, for example, a good range of different vigours, so you can obviously graft onto the right variety there. So it's a really good way, and obviously we're also trying to encourage this year lots of local schools to get involved in this particular weekend. So we announced our best dressed potato competition, and I contacted over 20 schools a couple of weeks ago. And hopefully we're going to get some nice entries through a bit of potato decorating from the local schools as well, to keep it all very potatoey, and also an awareness that now is nature's natural time to start sort of chitting your potatoes, sprouting them on the windowsill to be planting sort of early March onwards.
Brilliant. So that's Saturday the 5th of February, and if you do want to bring a section of apple tree or pear or cherry wood in, do we need to book or anything? We would just turn up?
Yeah, just literally turn up, Peter. We're not sort of creating any booking slots, but it'll be quite a busy day. So we're running the event from 10 a.m. through till 4 in the afternoon. So there'll be plenty of time to get the necessary action required on your bit of sign wood. So it's allocated to a new thing. And obviously you can have a look and see how it's done. They work incredibly quickly with some very sharp knives. So it's
that's my memory of grafting, is the knife has to be razor sharp, and every day before you start grafting you have to sharpen your knife.
Yeah, but it is a precision instrument they use, but it's a fascinating process, and just watching them do a few will help you then maybe to go home and have a go yourself as well, which is the whole point of the weekend. Is to try and encourage people to experiment with grafting, because it's such a great way of building up your stock. I remember you can graft more than one variety onto a rootstock. Many varieties can be attached quite safely and successfully. 3 varieties of apple or 3 on a pear tree, absolutely fine. Even more can be attained. If you've got a limited space, you want to grow a family fruit tree, then this might be the opportunity to come down and get 3 good varieties, your favourite varieties, grafted.
Brilliant. Excellent. Thanks, Chris. And in the middle of the month, obviously, we've got Valentine's Day. So Valentine's always interests me why the rose is chosen for Valentine's, but I suppose good opportunity for us to plug the fact we've got a good deal on root-wrapped roses. And
indeed, and we do some nice red roses as well, don't we? I mean, it's popular, and it's a great time, perhaps, horticulturally, to be planting them too. So maybe for that reason, the middle of February traditionally is the time. I mean, you've got really till probably the middle of March to get your root-wrapped and your bare root roses in. Yep. If you're creating a nice hedge line, it wouldn't be a bad idea to get those in as well. But yes, I'm never too sure. Any sort of red flowers is symbolic of love, I'm sure. But plant some roses in your garden. You'll enjoy them for a lot more than just one day.
Definitely, and I think climbing roses are so good for sort of covering fences and things like that. If you want to have a nice long flowering plant that keeps going for a while, it's a really good plant to put in. Yeah,
and I did a recent talk at the garden centre, and I was talking about celebrating climbers, and the amount of questions I got at the end about roses. They seem to be the plant, and a plant which obviously will give you sort of maximum amount of colour, for very little effort. And that takes us on to the masterclass for February,
What's that on this month then?
Yeah, completely different from climbing plants. We're going to be looking at vegetable growing for beginners.
Okay. So Maybe I should come along and learn how to actually grow something, should I?
You're more than welcome, Peter. And everybody's welcome.
Do you cover peas and how you can get them to not be eaten by mice?
Oh gosh, I'll create a new section for that. But no, we do cover sort of the basics and sort of asking the questions. If you are starting a little vegetable garden, whether it's a raised bed or just a few plants in a window box or even in a hanging basket, what you can actually grow. But it's all, I try and do it in such a quite a simplistic way. But at the end of the day, what you grow, you want to be able to grow it. You want to use it for a reason, and not just because it looks attractive or pretty.
I think that's it. And equally, I mean, from my experience of growing vegetables, the flavour is really what is the major benefit. You grow some sweet corn. Well, I'm lucky to have an allotment, and I can grow them down there, and they just so much better than shop bought ones. I know my mother loves growing lettuce, and
for that reason,
again, you go and pick a fresh lettuce, and they do taste better. So I thoroughly recommend people come along and have a listen to that.
Certainly, and we do cover things like root crops, which are sort of deemed a little bit more difficult, but certainly carrots I found absolutely a doddle to grow in raised beds now. I have no problems growing them, whereas on my allotment years ago, I really was plagued by carrot root fly and all sorts of things. So hopefully there'll be advice, across all areas to give people that little bit of inspiration and hopefully put them in the right direction to grow some nice things in the veg garden.
Because I was fortunate enough to have a purple carrot
with
my roast the other weekend. I'd never had one before, and really tasted nice. I don't know. Unfortunately, it came from a company that specialises in selling odd-shaped vegetables, so ones that are deemed not fit for the supermarkets.
Excellent.
And in the box that came with all these funny vegetables, there was these purple carrots, and they were purple on the outside and a sort of yellowy orange core.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, I had a look at the seed packets, and there's obviously a couple of different types it could have been, but it's really nice flavour. I was really impressed with it.
Excellent. Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, it was originally with the Dutch breeding, obviously, orange being the national colour of the Netherlands, we got orange carrots, wasn't it? Originally they were not orange. So they're going back to how they should be.
Maybe that's why it tasted so nice.
Possibly.
And also in the news, I noticed quite a few manufacturers are finally getting around to changing their packaging and bringing it up to the sort of 21st century, aren't they? It's so good to see that the likes of Hoselock and Fostrogen are actually trying to get away from plastics and or non-recyclable plastics and moving towards cardboard and more easily recyclable packaging, which I think is great. I mean, every manufacturer did this, it would certainly make the waste streams so much easier to recycle, I'm sure. I'm sure,
Peter, you're absolutely right. And it frustrates me even more when I see, I saw one of the supermarkets promoting their discount vegetables, and they're all in plastic packaging on the screen. I'm thinking, this is not the right sort of message we're trying to get across. And as garden centres, we're trying to be as green as possible. And if our manufacturers, suppliers are helping that cause, that can only be a good thing, especially with the likes of the use of recycled plastics in packaging.
Well, I know one of the reasons we moved away from Gardman bird food and moved to Henry Bell was the fact that they were one of the first bird food manufacturers to actually put all of their products, the majority of their products, into recycled packaging. And
Perfect.
You just think, well, a plastic bag's a plastic bag. And same as like when you get a magazine through the post, do you really care whether you can see the cover or not? You know what's in it. Does it matter if it's slightly opaque? I really don't think it does. And I think it's so much more important to think of the environment than it is just to make everything so sparkly and glittery and clean.
Most definitely. And it's encouraging that the Fostrogen's having a repackage as well, and they're going to be an organic version of their product, which is great. And I noticed it's on the shelves now, so that's really good news. So it's got all
Fostrogen. my memory of it's like that orange cardboard box
Yes.
that you always had to keep somewhere dry and not in the shed because it absorbed moisture out of the air and slowly went off.
Yeah, those crystals became very hardened, and a little bit like how Miracle Grow responds in my shed at the moment because there's a bit of a dampness there. But yeah, I mean, things like storing granular feeds is good. I mean, liquid feeds are slightly different because obviously they are going to be in a recycled plastic bottle, but I think it's more difficult for the other products. But it is, about saving, obviously making sure you do store them in a nice, cool, dry atmosphere where possible.
And they last for several years, don't they?
They can do, yes. I mean, most people use them certainly in my household, they tend to get used up quite quickly. But if you have to store them, then make sure that they're in the right place and they're accessible, so you do use them. That's the thing; they can be tucked away and
you forget about them. I mean, certainly, I know fertilizers. I tend to have liquid. I like Maxi Crop, and I've had a bottle of that in my shed. Good couple of years. And I mean, you just use so little of it, and even if I watered every week with it, I think it still lasts a year. It's such good value. Yep.
No, that's very, very true. But I noticed on the other sort of products, the coffee lugs, they're having a bit of a makeover, aren't they?
Yes, they've dropped, I'm going to say, paraffin wax from their coating on the outside. So I guess they've maybe updated their manufacturing process. They've reduced their carbon footprint. It was only 6% or something, but that's one of those products that when you think about it, you're like, well, why haven't we been doing that for time immemorial? I mean, at the end of the day, coffee grounds, you start off with a coffee bean and you grind it up and make a lovely cup of coffee out of it. And our waste here at the Garden Centre gets recycled by Corley Recycling, and they're actually one of the waste companies that collect the coffee grounds from big retail establishments. And I should imagine the tonnage of coffee grounds they collect is quite significant, because it always amazes me how much coffee we go through each week. And they obviously collect it and then they send it off to Cambridgeshire, where they process all the coffee grounds and dry them out and then stick them together and turn them into coffee logs so we can burn them on our fires.
It's great. And I'm seeing so many of them around now. It seems to become a really popular product.
It's very popular. It's in all the supermarkets, or certainly all the ones around here. And like you say, I mean, I think my brother's burnt a few. When we took them on, we wanted to check they did actually burn, because there was I can remember a few years ago, quite a few log type products that they look great, but they didn't actually burn that well. Whereas the coffee logs really do burn well, and they're a nice sort of full circle product, I suppose, aren't they?
They certainly are. A great example of good recycling.
That's it. And something that made me giggle a little bit, it was the article I was reading in GTN about popularity of houseplants, and the fact that on some research done by Flower Card, TikTok, which some of our viewers may know as, I thought it's a video sort of sharing platform. Yeah. The most populous houseplant was a cactus, and then followed by an aloe, and then the Venus flytrap, and then on Instagram the most searched was the cactus, and then the tulip, and then the aloe, and researches on Google were the aloe, the cactus, and then the hibiscus.
Oh right, okay, so there's a bit of a theme going on there, isn't there?
Yeah,
certainly.
Cactus are clearly the winner.
And
the
aloe,
most popular search.
Yeah, and I suppose aloe vera, notoriously good as it is, it's the plant you have in your kitchen or your bathroom, just in case you get those incidences where you need to sort out a burn or a scald.
Well, that's it. I mean, I'm trying to think. The majority of my friends, I think, do have aloe vera plants in their houses. Yep. And that's quite easy. No, I mean, I guess for our listeners, we should maybe give them some tips on care, because I'll confess, mine lives in the conservatory.
Okay.
And it gets watered generally once a week. I think in the summer it possibly could do with more water, because it dries out massively between leaves. Now, someone told me that if it goes red or slightly sort of reddy brownish, is it getting too much sunlight, or
it's getting a bit stressed? Yeah, it's a bit stressed possibly. I know. I mean, aloe vera is generally just always need a bigger pot. That's the thing. If they're getting a bit restricted, they tend to not like those sort of conditions, and we'll sort of show that quite a bit. But yeah, keeping it well watered through the spring, from next month, from March through to September. In the winter, yeah, keep it on a dry regime. But I've got one which I brought over back legally, I have to say, from Gran Canaria a couple of years ago, because obviously over there they grow, and mine just keeps doubling in size sort of every, 6 or 9 months now. It's getting huge. So I repotted it the other day. Not probably the best time of the year to pot it, but it was getting so top heavy, it was starting to fall over.
Yes, I have that.
And in a bathroom, you don't want an aloe vera falling over in the bathroom, really.
Well, they're a bit spiky, aren't they?
Exactly, yes. Yeah, not good. So that's what it got. But no, you're right, Peter. Their demands on water are quite. And I think actually giving an aloe vera a session outside in our lovely hot sunshine is not going to do it any harm at all.
Okay, so the conservatory isn't a bad place to grow them, then.
Most definitely. It's just
maximum light. Make sure they get enough water to benefit from that.
But they do grow, and I do feel a little bit reluctant to remove the lower leaves because they're getting so large now and quite unruly. But obviously, in the normal train of things, you would be using them on a regular basis, but...
well, hopefully you don't have to use them on a regular basis.
No, but I feel as though I should be using them in some form. But no, a great plant. I'm very, from the beginning. When the plant gets to a certain size, they do produce an amazing flower as well.
Right.
I've never seen, I have to say, maybe our Dig It audience can correct me if I'm wrong, but I've never actually seen one flower in a pot, but certainly when you see them growing in their natural habitat down in Spain and that part of the world, they do produce a wonderful large flower, towering 8 to 10 foot tall. So they produce big old plants in time. So for that reason, yeah, we all should grow an aloe vera just for the sheer fun of what they can do to our to help enrich our lives.
Well, they're so beneficial, and just thinking, is there more than one variety that we should be growing? Because my one is, I thought, sort of quite spiky, but you get some which seem to have a lot sort of little white spots on their leaves. Is that just different growing conditions?
Possibly, yeah.
Because mine looks more like a cactus.
Yeah, I think if you go to a specialist cacti nursery where they do a good range of succulents, then you probably would find different variants. But I think just the straightforward aloe vera per se might have slight variations in its growth pattern, which might give you those little markings on the leaves, perhaps. I don't know, but it's usually fairly clear of blemishes and things. But again, it's a tough plant, and you often see people. Historically, when you go abroad, they might actually graffiti onto a cacti and things. Dreadful thing to do, but of course they expand as the plants grow. And of course, aloe veras are a perfect example where any expansion of the cells will magnify whatever's sort of written into the stem. Yeah, so all this talk on houseplants, Peter, perhaps just a reminder for our listeners that we can obviously go back to Jane Perone's wonderful chat about houseplants and how to grow them, going back into our December podcast, wasn't it? So
December. And obviously, if you still got your Ponsettia, there were some tips on Ponsettia care in that as well, wasn't there?
A quick update on one of mine, Peter. The pink one has finally started to drop its leaves. The red one, I have to say, looks exactly like it did on Christmas Day. It's not changed a bit. So
that's done well then.
That's done incredibly well. And that's again another thumbs up for UK growers, because these came from our supplier down on the south coast. So well done to them to keep it looking so good.
Brilliant. And what tasks should we be getting on with now, Chris?
Oh, well, February, it's a bit of a mixed bag, really. There's things we can start off on our windowsills. I'm thinking really of good old potatoes. We were chatting about them earlier.
Yeah, chitting potatoes.
Yeah, so a nice, bright location, not too warm. And you can start them off, obviously, in your egg boxes or your seed trays, rose end upwards. So that's where the little tiny shoots are going to start to grow from.
Yep.
Set them up there, and that's what I did over the weekend. And they're going to hopefully produce a decent amount of growth for the first plantings in early March.
Okay, so maybe I'm growing them in the wrong temperature, but my sort of potato chitting, how long should the sort of shoots be when you're planting them? Because Mine always seem to be sort of 3, 4, 5 inches long by the time I get round to putting them in the ground. And I thought they're only meant to be about 2, 3 inches.
Yeah, usually a couple of inches. Yeah, so maybe light, maximum light is good. Of course, at this time of year, light levels are low anyway. And maybe just regularly turning the tray or the carton round so you get nice balanced light would help.
Okay.
That might help. But yeah, try and choose a south or west facing window if you can. And obviously temperature, if it's too warm, then that'll obviously encourage the chits to start to produce obviously growth. Remember, if they get quite long, you can cut them back, a pair of secateurs or some sharp scissors, you can cut them back, and that'll obviously stimulate shoots further down where you've cut from, which will obviously give you more stems. And of course, we know potatoes are stem tubers, so the more stems your tuber will produce, the more crop you will get. So actually nipping back your little chits is actually quite a good little thing to be done, to be honest with you. It's not
I've never thought of, because I've always historically just rip the whole things off and sort of turn them back into bold potatoes again. And...
No. Try and keep and retain some of the stems there, because they will effectively affect the amount of
how
crop
many potatoes you get. And I think I was also told you're meant to only have, is it 3 or 4 chits per potato?
Yeah, I think that's realistic. Yeah, especially if you're growing them in the open garden. If you were growing them in a pot, you could let a few more develop, because obviously you're relying on that particular potato to produce your crop. So the more shoots and the more stems you can produce, then hopefully the better crop you're going to get long term. Especially with varieties like Charlotte, smallish potatoes. If you can create a good structure of shoots in the pot, then that's going to be a good sign that you're going to hopefully get a decent weighty crop. Yeah.
Okay. And all the bulbs arrived the other week, didn't they, Chris?
They did, yes. And it's so good to see summer arrives on a pallet in the form of gladioli and those dahlias and begonias. Yeah, it's very heartwarming at this time of the year, isn't it, to see potential summer colour.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously the shallots and garlic. And I think we've got quite a few shallots this year, haven't we?
Yeah, I counted actually 5 varieties, but the 2 which caught my eye were Golden Gourmet and Red Sun. They're 2 really good varieties this year. I don't think we've had Red Sun in for a while, so that's a good.
Is that one you've grown before?
I have grown it. Yeah, I don't grow that many shallots, but I always like to grow a few. And I usually start mine off in my cold greenhouse in the cell trays. So these are 15 or 20 cell trays. Just pop a bit of compost in there. Just push the shallot halfway in. Give it a bit of water them in, and then just leave them to produce a nice strong root system. And then I have something almost like a plug plant to put in early part of March, so in about a month's time.
Are we talking about what I know as root trainers? Or
you could use root trainers, yeah. I'd save those for the runner beans and the broad beans later, but just an ordinary, almost like a bedding plant tray is absolutely fine for your shallots. So if you've got some of those hanging around, you'll get a nice strong root system, and it doesn't. Also, shallots are a bit like onions, can get pulled out by the birds.
Yep.
So if you've got a nice strong root system in when you're
planting,
planting,
makes it a lot heavier for them to
it
try
makes
and
it more
pull out.
difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the little 6-pack, plastic trays that you get for when you buy the bedding, that's a really good use for recycling, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I mean, if you've got, obviously we do, I think 18 and 12 pack ones. If you've got something with a slightly smaller cell, then obviously you're not going to use as much compost. So if you're wanting to do a nice batch, I usually a 20 pack. I don't grow more than 20 shallots, so that's usually enough for the kitchen. So, and that's probably half a pack. Okay. So that keeps me going as well. So it's a good way of getting that little bit of a head start. If you've got a cold frame or a cold greenhouse, I probably wouldn't recommend growing those on a windowsill. They need a bit more cool conditions,
right,
to encourage those roots to form. Okay,
and I suppose carrots we can think about now, can't we? Is it early nonce?
That's the one. That's the variety. Yeah, perfect. So get those in probably the latter end of this month, I would say, unless you've got a cloche. If you've got some cloches over, you can put over to your soil to warm your soil up. But get those in, because they'll germinate within a couple to 3 weeks at this time of the year. And get those going as well. So if you want to start those with your shallots and your potatoes, you're at least making a head start. Probably a little bit early for your tender beans, but maybe broad beans could go in as well now.
Okay. And with the spring sort of in the air nearly, it must be time to think about forcing rhubarb, isn't it?
Yes, so if you've got a reasonably well-established crown, obviously, then now really is the time to start either putting a bucket over your rhubarb, or a bin, a plastic bin, or you can buy
Dustbin, I suppose.
Dustbin,
It'd probably be about the right size for my one. It's enormous.
You got it?
My
Right.
rhubarb, yeah, I'm really pleased. I've got 3 little baby bits off it, so I've split it.
Excellent.
And the trouble with rhubarb is you can't crop from it for a couple of years, can you? Once you plant it, sort of split it.
It needs a rest between plantings.
Yeah, and but the other thing, Chris, I was going to talk to you about was my rhubarb. I'm going to say it's sort of growing out of the ground. Does that make sense? So the woody bit,
it's
the
exposed.
crown, it's sort of getting taller and taller. Do I need to worry about that? I mean, anything I should be doing with it?
I think if it's doing that, it's going to be more vulnerable to heat, to the sun, which obviously is not a good thing, and obviously possibly to too much moisture too. I would give it a really good mulch, a nice generous mulch, so you cover the entire area.
Okay.
Go down to if you can get some rail rotted manure or garden compost, go down to probably 3 inches over the whole area.
The top of the plant.
Top,
yeah, I mean, it'll be no doubt starting to shoot. It's not going to be too late to do that.
No, I think where the actual where you start to see the bulbous bit start to push through, perhaps just keep the mulch a little bit away from that, but the rest of the solid mass you've got there, try and cover that.
Just cover it all
and
over.
That'll do 2 things. It'll stimulate the plants into some good strong growth as well as feeding them as well. So you're getting a double barrel effect by just doing that as well. And you'll find it'll obviously hold moisture a lot better, because obviously if it's exposed, if that woody part of the plant is exposed, because it is almost like a rhizome sort of structure. It's a very odd structure as a rhubarb crown.
It's a funny thing, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, but what you're saying makes sense, because I know certainly last summer I don't water it, I must confess. It just grows, and it grows very well. But last summer it definitely looked like it was sort of wilting a bit, and it.
Yeah.
So hopefully that'll help it this year, not next year even.
It'll help it all right through the year. Yes, indeed.
So excellent. Well, I'll go and do that then. And it's also that time of year when we can start thinking about repotting a few things, isn't it? Is it like the woody shrubs, would you call them? So if you've got maybe an acer,
yes,
or something like a small tree growing in a pot.
I think anything on your deck or on your patio which needs a bigger pot, now is the time to do it, before it starts to come into growth next month, really.
Okay.
And you're working with nature, because the plant's obviously still in dormancy. Although I was looking at, my acers the buds are starting to swell on them already. So sooner rather than better. And just basically the usual rules: get yourself a nice generous pot. A good size, obviously, probably half the size, again, bigger if you've got a big plant, because obviously if you do it in sort of 2 smaller steps, it becomes expensive more than anything to keep changing the pots. Good crocking, so good drainage in the bottom, and then obviously make sure you get yourself a good compost particular to the plant. So if it's an acer, yes, an ericaceous, peat-free one if you can find one, but certainly ericaceous. And then obviously for your other trees, you might be replanting things like your willows. A lot of people grow willows in pots and such like. Good quality peat-free compost to give them a really good start, and water them well in. You might put some mulch around the top as well, just to finish it off decoratively, because obviously that looks good. And job done, really. And obviously if you're on a solid concrete or a solid patio, and maybe some little terracotta feet just to raise the plants
Raise them up, saves them freezing to the patio,
indeed,
doesn't it?
yeah.
Hopefully. And bay trees, can I repot my bay tree?
Perfect time for that as well, yes. Yeah, I mean, the bay trees, you could repot any time of the year, but again, it's one of those jobs where we're quiet in the garden, get it done, then it's done for the season.
Excellent, okay.
Oh, and finally, Peter, it might be quite nice just to mention tiggywinkles, which are our
charity of the year, aren't they? 2022.
They are indeed.
Last year was Wildlife Trust, and
indeed.
We obviously change it each year. So tiggywinkles is all about hedgehogs, from my understanding.
It used to be very much centred around that, but they are now basically a wildlife hospital per se. In fact, they are reputedly to be the busiest and the most advanced in the world. So they cover lots of different animals, but mainly, yes, hedgehogs play a very important part in their repertoire of patients, as it were.
So wildlife rather than sort of domestic
Indeed, yes.
creatures.
And it's it's based obviously in Haddenham, just outside Ellesby, so it's sort of in our
quite local to us then.
It is indeed, and it was started 40 years ago by the Stocker family, literally in their back garden.
Right.
In Haddenham, so it's moved on, and the family are very much involved in the family continued to develop the charity into obviously such a well-known name out there. So we're delighted to be supporting them this year, and we'll have at our next event at our Grafton Grow Day, we'll have a nice video playing of some of the work they do there as well, and hopefully we'll get a chance to visit the Wildlife Hospital at some point this year as well to see what wonderful work they do. So
it'd be really interesting.
Yeah, so to discover more about Tiggy Winkles, we'll put a link onto the show note page, and we look forward to hopefully people trying to help them in any way they can this year.
Excellent. Okay, Chris, well, I think that just about wraps it up for us for this month.
Yeah, it's turned out to be quite a busy February, hasn't it, Peter?
Definitely. Brilliant. Okay, thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Peter. Today's show was brought to you by Buckingham Garden Centre and Nurseries. The show was hosted by Chris Day and Peter Brown. The show was produced by Peter Brown. And our thanks to Chiltern Music Therapy for providing the music. Thanks for listening.
At Chiltern Music Therapy, we want everyone to know the difference that music can make in their lives. From parents and their premature babies in hospital to grandparents with dementia. We provide music therapy and community music services to people of all ages and needs across England. We work both digitally and in person in people's homes, care homes, schools, hospitals and hospices. Find out more at chilternmusictherapy.co.uk.